Hello everyone. I thought I'd make a quick video trying to help you as you navigate starting a Zoom meeting or using a Zoom meeting in your church meeting. Let me show you how to get one started. There's a couple different ways that you'll find that people have to get started. One is your Zoom app. Any Zoom meetings that you have made should show up here. You can see that I'm logged in. If this doesn't show up as you, you'll need to log in and then you'll be able to see your Zoom meeting. You can just go ahead and hit start. You can also do a similar thing in the browser. Again, you need to be logged in. Then you'll see your meetings. Here's my upcoming meetings. Here is this one. I made this one recurring so it won't go away. And then I can just hit start. The one last way, and this is the way a lot of people do it, is maybe you have an invitation and you just have a link. And so if maybe it's in a Word document or in an email or it's somewhere else, you can always just click that to get it started. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'll click on this link and it's going to pop open Zoom meetings, and it's going to ask me, do I want to join with computer audio? That's usually the first question you're going to see. What does that mean? That means, do you want to use the microphone and the speakers that are connected to your computer? Usually you do, but sometimes maybe you have a different setup or you're using something else. But for me, if you're using your computer, if it's using your phone, it will ask you kind of a different question. But this is usually you want to join that. So here's my meeting, and here's a bunch of controls. So now I've started the meeting. The first thing you want to notice is down here. I've got a mute and a start video. If I click that button, then it's going to mute. No one's going to hear what I'm saying. Right now I've got it set to not showing the video. If I click that, normally you would see me. Because I'm using my camera to record this webcam, you can't see me. But we'll click that video. You'll want to click that to show yourself. What are some of the other features? If people can't hear you, you can click this up arrow, and here there maybe is a couple different microphones set up on your computer. You might want to choose a different microphone. Or if you can't hear anybody else, maybe there's a different speaker that's set up on your computer. So you might want to go through and select a different speaker. They do have a test, a speaker and a microphone, so if you click that, it'll play a little music and it'll ask you, did you hear that? And then it'll ask you to talk. And if you can see this down here, it's hearing you talk. It'll ask you to talk. So since both of those worked, I'll say yes, and I'll finish that. A couple more things in this screen before we get started with the real meeting. Security, it's kind of nice. Lock meeting says that everybody who's in the meeting is going to be the only ones allowed. You're not going to allow anybody else to come in. That's usually not something we check. Waiting room, we talked about the waiting room when we set up the meeting. Usually we don't set up a waiting room unless you don't want people to come into your meeting without you specifically saying. So I'll disable that. Share screen. Do you want your participants to be able to share their screen? Usually, in a church environment, the host wants to share the screen, but he doesn't usually want the other participants to share their screen. So you can turn that off. You can always turn it on if somebody wants to share something. Chat. I'm going to turn on chat. I think most of you have seen chat. Chat is right here. It's this button. If you click it, it's going to go over here. Make your video screen a little smaller. If you don't like it, you can always pop it out. And now you can put chat anywhere you want. So if you had multiple screens, you could go put it on a different screen. If you just have this screen, well, maybe you want it on this side, or it's in your way, so you want to make it a little bit smaller. Or maybe you decide, no, I just don't even want to see it. And then chat pops up there. If you want to push it back in, you can, there's a way to do it. But I'm not seeing it. So I'm just going to leave mine out for now. What does chat do? Well, if you have a question that says, I have a question, then you can type that in and everybody can see it. If you don't want everybody to see it, or maybe I'll show you in a little bit, you can actually direct message people so only one can see it. From here you have a few things. that you can choose. I think the default is probably all that you'll ever need. So that is chat. What about rename themselves? Well, some people like funny names, and I always allow people to rename themselves. I don't see any problem with that. And this is a big one. In a sacrament meeting setting, we don't want to hear anybody else's microphones, so we don't allow them to unmute themselves. So we turn that off, and they can't unmute themselves. Only the host can unmute and mute. But in a classroom setting, you most likely do want to get feedback, and so you do want to allow people to unmute themselves. So that would be checked. So usually, at least these bottom three would be checked. What about participants? Well, right now this is really boring because I'm the only one on the meeting. So in just a minute, I'm going to try and get a few people to join me on my meeting, and you can see how to do that. So actually, I'll do that right now. I'm going to pause this video, and I'll work on getting some people added to the meeting. Okay, we're back, and we've got a meeting full of people. Let's close this and see what we've got. So I'm just gonna click that, and I can't. Let me try and close it. Okay. So with us in the meeting today, we have brother and sister Hinckley, which is a little bit weird to see them, but great that they could join us today. And we also have Jesus, which is good. We've got Joseph, and we've got Lehi. And so let me show you a few things about how we know who's in the meeting today. We can go and we can see all of them. So up here in the view, you've got a couple different views. We can see who the last person to speak was. Since I'm on mute, if I change this, you'll hear me on some of these devices I've got set up. But so the speaker view is a really good view. What it does is it tries to decide who is currently speaking, and it will switch to whoever is currently speaking, which is nice. So whoever starts to talk, it'll switch to their picture, and you can watch them. And it'll try to do its best to guess who's speaking. Sometimes it can be a pain if somebody doesn't mute their mic and they keep making some noises in the background. Speaker view will keep pulling them up, thinking that they're talking, when in actuality it's just picking up some background noise. So sometimes it works great usually, but sometimes it can be a pain. Gallery view shows you everybody, and if we had more people on this meeting, it would show you everybody. But here's a nice one where you can see President Hinckley, you can see me as the host, you can see Jesus and Joseph and Lehi, and you can kind of know who's in your meeting. Now, sometimes your students won't always put nice names like this. They'll have funny names there, and you'll have to try to guess who that is. But hopefully you know who's in your class. So, okay. So this is a nice way to see your class. There was one more option, full screen. What that essentially does is it gets rid of the start menu down here. It gets rid of the top banner up here. And you only see Zoom. If you accidentally push this or you want to get out of this, it's as easy as just hitting escape. You'll get back your bars. So let's go into participants real quick. So participants is a nice screen. You can see everybody. You can see that everybody's muted. I'm muted as the host. Jesus is muted. Joseph Lehi is all muted. President Hinckley is not currently muted, or he is. Yeah, he is muted. So I could ask him to unmute, and I send him a little message that says ask to unmute, and he's not doing it for some reason. Or if I don't like what President Hinckley's putting on the screen, now I'm sure he's not putting anything on the screen that's inappropriate, but if someone was, you can always just stop their video. As a host, you have that option. And then see, President Hinckley just goes to his name down here. Or maybe Lehi, and Lehi's doing something, so we're going to stop their video. I hope you don't have to do that, but it's a good idea to know that you can do it. And you can't restart their video as a host. The reason for that is there's some privacy concerns. So you can't unmute somebody's mic, and you can't force somebody to show their camera. Zoom doesn't want to be responsible for if you're doing something and somebody forces your mic to go unmuted or forces your camera to turn on. So you can turn those things off. You can mute somebody and you can stop their camera, but you can't unmute or you can't start somebody's camera. So I'm going to hurry and have Lehigh and President Hinckley turn back on their cameras. Okay, now we've got President Hinckley and Lehigh. We've got their cameras back on. When I went to turn their cameras back on, the first thing it said is, they can't turn your cameras back on because the host has stopped your camera. So I had to come back in here and actually ask them to turn their camera back on. And as soon as I did that, a little screen popped up and they could turn their cameras back on. So anyway, just to let you know, that's how it works. If for some reason there's somebody who's saying, oh my gosh, I didn't get the invitation, how do I get invited? You can immediately come into here. You can email them, but the easiest thing to do is maybe just like copy that invitation or copy the link. And if you want to see what it says, now you can just literally just post that in. I'll show you what it says. It'll look just like this. And there's the link. And if I was to copy the entire invitation, I could come over here and you could see the whole link, just like you're used to seeing. So that's a quick way. In participants, you can just go and say invite, and you can get those. You can also mute all. So sometimes if there's a lot of talking going on, you can mute all. Now remember, you'll have to allow them to unmute if you want them to come back. And here's those options down here. So mute people upon entry, which means it's a good idea to do that. So that means when people first start to join, it automatically mutes them, and they can unmute themselves as necessary. Here's the selection that allows somebody to unmute. If you were to uncheck this, now they can't unmute themselves. They're on mute permanently. That would, like I say, that's good for a sacrament setting, but not good for a classroom setting. So let's allow them to unmute themselves. And then here's the rename themselves. The same options you get over here. So this play a sound when someone leaves or joins. If you're trying to keep track of who's coming in or who's leaving the class, that might be a good thing to turn on. Now you're going to get a little ding sound every time somebody leaves or every time somebody comes in. So you'll have an idea. Whoa, did somebody just join? Let's go look and see. Or did somebody just leave? I wonder who left. So that's sometimes a nice thing, or sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's if you got a big, huge Sunday school class that you're trying to deal with, you don't really care if somebody's coming on or off. You don't want it to interrupt the classroom. And again, we already went over waiting room and lock meeting. So in the last one, I didn't know how to get rid of this. There's a close up here, but how do I get rid of it if I pop out? Well, if I pop it out, I can go down here and then say merge it back into the meeting window, and it merges it back in here. If I don't like it anymore, I can close it. Okay, so now we've got participants out of the way. What about chat? Well, I said here's how you can type a question. You can say I have a question, and everybody who's monitoring the chat window, everybody who turns on the chat is going to be able to see that. But maybe I just have a question for Lehigh, and I can say, hey Lehigh, I heard about your dream. Oh, I don't know. Whatever you want to say. And now Lehigh's going to see this on his chat. You can notice it says direct message, but nobody else is going to see that. And now Lehigh can respond back to you. Yeah, it was awesome. And you and Lehigh can have a little conversation without anybody else seeing. And if Lehigh wants everybody to see it, he can come down here and he can change it, and now he can type again to everybody. So that's a way that you can chat. Now I hope your classroom students aren't direct messaging each other back and forth, but if they are, there's really nothing you can do about it except for turn off that. So you can come down here and say everyone publicly, and now there's no, you're not allowed to send a direct message. Everything you type will go out to everybody. And maybe that's a good idea for a classroom setting to avoid direct messages. You can also just change it so that you're the only one allowed to send a message. And that's usually not a good idea because you kind of want to encourage people's participation. So there's these, Or you can say nobody can chat. Again, I think this one's probably the default is publicly and directly. That's probably best. Otherwise, you can maybe just choose everybody publicly. If for some reason you got some great comments and you want to save them at the end of your meeting, you can hit this and it will save the chat for you. Okay, so I think we're getting close to being done. I'm going to close this and I can see everybody again. Once again, we have the speaker view. I don't know. It looks like President Hinckley's still the last one to talk. Okay, so one other thing that you might want to know. As a host, you don't have the option, but all of the people joining your meeting will have an option to do what's called raise your hand. And if I look up here, I can see that Lehi has raised his hand. Lehi must have a question about what's going on. So he's pushed his raise hand. It's down in the participants area, and actually in the chat area. So he's raised his hand. And now if you see this, you might want to stop your discussion and say, hey, Lehi, I see that you have a question. And you can address Lehi's question directly. If he raises his hand and you don't call on him, he may choose to lower his hand, or you as a host can help him lower it, and you can say, okay, I've got your question done. And so here's the recording one. As church classes, we don't been encouraged not to record them. Reactions are just kind of like if you ask the whole audience maybe a question, a yes/no question, they could put a thumbs up. There's not really a thumbs down. Maybe they could do a crying one or something. If they're excited about what you just taught them, maybe they could give you a little clapping one. But they're really not super useful. Okay, a couple more things, and I think we'll wrap it up. So sometimes people want to see the same person, and this is more for users rather than teachers. But let's say that you only want to see your teacher. And let's say I'm now attending a class and Lehi is, or maybe Joseph is teaching. And I really only want to see Joseph. I know other people are talking, but with this speaker view, I don't, President Hinckley keeps interrupting and he keeps asking questions, or he keeps ruffling papers in the background. And so the speaker view keeps showing him, and I don't want to see him. I only want to see Joseph. Well, I can come up here and I can pin Joseph. Now Joseph's on my screen and he's the only one I'm gonna see. So I can see him now. If I want to remove that pin, then I can go back to seeing President Hinckley ruffling his papers. So again, you can come up here and pin. Now this is only for you. Not everybody is seeing what you pin. Only you are. So a pin is nice if you just want to see the teacher and you don't want to see anybody else in class. If you want to remove pin. Now as a host, you can do one better. Let's again say I'm the host, but right now I've turned the time over to Lehi. And Lehi's given a little bit of present, and I want everybody to see Lehi. Well, I can spotlight him, and I can force everybody to see Lehi. Now, I don't know exactly if they go and they try to pin somebody else what would happen, but this is a way to take it off of whoever is speaking the loudest and kind of force everybody to see Lehi speaking. So I can remove that spotlight and they'll probably go back to President Hinckley, but it stayed on Lehi. But you can do that for any of your people. So if you really want somebody to see something, you can spotlight them. And then everybody will their picture would go to that. If I wanted to spotlight President Hinckley, I could, or Jesus. So here's what I did. I said, well, I really want everyone to see both President Hinckley and Jesus. So I've got two spotlights going. All right, so now I can just remove the spotlight, and then I can remove that spotlight, and I'm back to my gallery view or my speaker view, whichever one I want. That's kind of a cool feature, and I think that's pretty new to Zoom. I didn't used to have that, but it's kind of nice to force people to see if you've turned the time over to somebody and they're preparing or they're talking, and they don't need to see you anymore. That's a way to help people know who they should be paying attention to. You can, if you're the host, you can make somebody else the host. I don't see a real reason to do that. That would mean, hey, I need to go, and somebody else needs to finish this meeting and maybe end it. If somebody's being a real stinker, maybe Joseph giving you a hard time, you can remove that person from the meeting. I'm not sure what would happen if they would try to come back in. I've never had to do that. And you could report them, and I certainly don't think we need to do that. There isn't a waiting room, but you could create one and put somebody back in the waiting room. Then I guess if that's one way to deal with the problem. Like I say, I've really never had to use any of these things. This is a church class, and so hopefully everyone's on their best behaviors. I think that about does it. I'm going to go through and see if I forgot anything. Okay, I did forget something pretty important. Sharing our screen. Most of the teachers are going to want to share the screen. Well, how do you do that? Well, you hit this green button and this pops up and it shows you a few of the screens you can see. All of these are what you can see my open tabs down below. So you can share your whole entire screen, or you can share something that you already have open. Some people don't like sharing their whole screen because they might have a bunch of tabs open and they don't necessarily want people to see everything that they have open. So maybe you just share your browser, my Google Chrome right here. Or maybe you can see my email right here. I'm going to share my whole screen like this and hit share. And now everyone's going to see exactly what I have on my screen. So they're going to see my little notepad. They're going to see my email, which is interesting. And now I'm going to bring up my browser so that they would see that. Now I'm going to stop sharing and show you the difference. So let's stop sharing. I come back to my gallery view and then I click on this button and I say I'm only going to share my browser. And I click on that. Now they only see this. They don't get a chance to see anything else. And let's say I want to see President Nelson's invite, or maybe I want to go to Jeffrey R. Holland's talk. And here's what I'm going to talk about today. And here we go. But I've got these people over here. When I share my screen, they moved over here. I don't want these are maybe these are in my way. So I only want to see whoever's talking. This is the same as the speaker view, so whoever's talking. Maybe I don't want to see anybody, so I can shrink it all the way down, maybe put it just down in that corner. And then I've still got my whole screen to work with. Now, even though you're sharing your screen, the people that you're working with, they're not going to see this over here. They're not going to see this little tab. This is only on your screen. So you can have it like this. How do I flip that? Like that. So they're not seeing this. They're going to see your screen, and then they're going to see whatever options they have. Maybe they left this up. Maybe they like it horizontal. Let me do it. No, I can't get it to go horizontal. Anyway, and or maybe they just want it like that. So there you go, and you can come through and do your thing. One thing to note is if I was to play this video for you,
we ought to always have a prayer in our
you will
heart.
not be hearing
But
this
there
audio.
is something
I'm
about
hearing it as
saying
host
the
just
words,
fine, and everyone else
and
is
for me, saying them out
I
loud.
can't hear. What's going on? I can't hear. So you'll have to do something like this. This is important if you're going to share a video. You want to stop sharing. We're going to start sharing, and then I want to say, share my computer sound. Now, anything that's coming through on my computer sound is also going to go through my Zoom. And you might want to optimize your screen sharing for a video clip if you're going to share a video. I don't know that that's necessary, but since I'm going to show a video, I'm going to click that. And then I go back and I share this. And now if I hit this,
there are many lessons that come out of the Sacred Grove experience.
It is,
and not the least is the opposition.
I'm going to pause that. So that is important to know. If you're going to play a video, you need to make sure you click these two. And if you're not going to play a video, you might want to unclick them. So that's important when you're sharing a video. There's some other things up here. You can share just parts of your screen. Maybe you can share some music, which I've never done. If you had two cameras, maybe you could share you could have one pointing at you and one pointing to something else. And you can even share files, which I don't see any of these as big use in a classroom setting. Okay, well, I went through all the options and I think I've covered everything that might be necessary. If you have any questions, certainly get a hold of me and I'll answer them. But I hope this helps you run a class using Zoom and know how to know how to use the options. There's certainly the participants tab and the chat tab. I hope you've got your questions answered on how to allow people to chat or how to allow them to unmute themselves. So thank you very much for watching this, and we'll see you later. It turns out I did forget one thing. Maybe the last thing that you'll do as part of a meeting is you'll need to end the meeting. That's done by hitting end, and you can leave the meeting, and this is what you maybe would choose if you've turned the host over to somebody else. Since that's unlikely, it's more likely as the host you'll hit end meeting for all. That will turn everybody's meeting off and end it for everybody. If you aren't a host, you'll just have this option. You can just leave. As a host, I can end the meeting for all. So once I click that, then everything goes away, and that's how you do it. And you can see at one point I actually hit the record button, and I told you not to, and here it is. So I hit the record button for a few minutes, and then I hit stop. So if you do that and you want to record a meeting, you'll do that, and then Zoom, after you end the meeting, will go ahead and convert the meeting to basically a video file. And after it's done, it's going to say, where do you want to save the video file? And at that point, you could send the recording to somebody else. So maybe for a family meeting, that would be great, and you could send that video off to somebody. For a church meeting, obviously this isn't very important. Okay, well, I thank you for watching. We'll see you later.